BioWare have finally broken their silence on Anthem. For over a month now, players have had to do with nothing. There was little hope. Indeed, BioWare purposefully did shut down their communications in order to not overshare things too early and to further disappoint players. So, with Anthem 1.2 being out and E3 looming, what does the future hold? Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. A bit of a quick one today. Anthem has been in a pretty poor state. Everyone knows that BioWare have been pretty much silent about it, and that the game has been suffering from a lack of content, a lack of balance, and a massive loot system problem. More recently, BioWare announced the abandonment of their initial roadmap. Yes, the plan they announced after the game's release had to be abandoned, with key endgame features like Cataclysms being left in limbo, being delayed majorly past their initially planned launch date. Indeed, past the initially planned launch date that was kind of known to a lot of people who actually purchased the game and got on board with the plan of Anthem and its roadmap. Stuff that people would have expected, which is a massive letdown and also a kick in the teeth to people who put their hard-earned money into this game. Still, the decision, in my view, is actually kind of understandable, as I think we all know that no amount of content quickly thrown in could fix the core problems of Anthem, for the root cause of Anthem's failure is not really a lack of content, it's just extremely poorly designed systems that fundamentally make the game not that rewarding to play. Well, BioWare have released patch 1.2 and they have given us an update on the state of the game and what their plans for the future are. So in a community update, community manager Jesse Anderson said that it's finally time to share what the team has been working on. He said the 1.2 update contains a lot of good content under the hood that players won't see right away, but is actually setting things up for the future Cataclysm update. Now, Jesse was clearly aware of player suspicions, so he went on to say, "You're probably wondering when it's going to release. Rather than rush it out the door, we want to take time and get feedback from you and make changes based on what we hear. In order to do that, we are releasing a public test server on PC, which will allow you to see the content as it is being developed and gives you the ability to provide feedback. While this won't immediately solve all current issues, we want to continue to hear from you as we make improvements to Anthem, and the PTS is a great way to do that." He then went on to say that they will give players a first look at the Cataclysm in a stream tomorrow, and well, hopefully their power doesn't get cut out for that one too. So that's good. We'll probably work the Cataclysm first look into our Friday episode of the Roundup. Now, looking at the actual 1.2 update, well, it's not massive, but the changes are kind of telling. They're adding in the ability to fast travel to Striders when in free play, as well as a number of other small free play quality of life increases. It's not game changing, but it's definitely good stuff. They have also further rebalanced a number of abilities, generally increasing base damage by like 10 to 40%, and of course, because that's base damage, that'll be compounded on a lot by other effects. And that's something that hopefully will go a long way to speeding up the pace of Anthem's content. That absolutely, I think, will be good for the gameplay of Anthem, because really, it's notoriously slow at the higher difficulty levels because of massive enemy health pools, another big design issue that the game fundamentally does face. Oh, and it also added 3 new legendary missions to the mission pool, but I don't think anyone cares that much. And as much as these are small but welcome changes, there is no news on the planned loot overhaul, or really anything else bar that tease of the Cataclysm content reveal tomorrow. Community reactions have been lukewarm to say the least, which is totally fair from a playability point of view. This patch does not really do a lot to improve the core Anthem gameplay experience, and it doesn't really add anything that's going to make somebody excited to return to the game. Which, paradoxically, I think might be a sort of okay-ish to good thing. And that might seem crazy, but hear me out. I think that scrambling to crunch developers to add as much content into the game right now would be a bad move. I think it would be rather like painting over mold instead of getting rid of the mold. Anthem is rotten to its core. It's a loot game with terribly designed loot. It's a sort of dungeon crawling game in a way, with pretty poorly designed dungeons. While the core Javelin gameplay certainly does have some good to it, the rest of the game kind of pales in comparison. I mean, yeah, most of Anthem is not worth its, I would say, average but at least pretty shiny combat system. The lack of updates, in my view, could broadly mean 2 things. Number 1, BioWare understand what I've just said, and they are taking the time to improve the fundamentals of Anthem's gameplay loop. The second option is a bit worse. It's that this pretty much is just the pace of updates that we can expect for the next while. While I think that would be a fair conclusion based on what we've seen, I don't actually think that's what they'll do. EA and BioWare have consistently said that they have big plans for the future of this game and that they will support it long into the future. Rather than abandon it, they very much could rework the fundamentals and just essentially have a second launch. Very much similar to what happened with Blizzard Entertainment's Diablo 3, a game that launched with remarkably similar loot problems to Anthem, tapered off pretty darn quickly, and then saw a massive resurgence in popularity with its Loot 2.0 update that of course preceded the Reaper of Souls expansion. It is, I think, the wise thing to step back, re-examine why the game is such a mess, and then have the developers work on a new plan rather than just panic on the current one. Why have your loot designers make a new piece of loot that goes into a broken system when you could have your loot designers be working on a better fundamental loot system? The long-term path to victory for Anthem is one that will involve short-term pain. Meaningful change is what's needed, and that will not come quickly, and it will come at a lot of expense in terms of money and development time. And really, this all reminds me of a talk that I heard from the Path of Exile developers at GDC Talk, and they talked about how they really designed the game so that it's okay for people to quit, but that they will normally quit with a plan to come back in the future. It might seem crazy, but it's actually quite smart. Rather than have players stop playing the game because they get burnt out, like the type of burnout that fosters long-term resentment, like what's kind of happened with Anthem, they would rather their players just feel like they can dip out of a season when they're bored and, be excited to come back to the next one. Now, for Path of Exile, that does make a fair degree of sense because they do a lot of experimentation with each season, like new gameplay features, new systems, and that means the new seasons are pretty compelling to come back to. That's probably something we won't see really anytime soon for Anthem, but it potentially is something that could be provided by Anthem's Cataclysms. So overall, what does Anthem need? Well, I think Cataclysms should broadly correlate with seasons, like one a quarter, sort of like with Destiny 2 seasons. Now these things, they should bring new content, new game modes, new abilities, new gear, new locations, and that kind of thing are ideal, but it's hard to see how that would fit into the current setup of Anthem. Now the combat needs to be a lot more reactive, so I think it would be best to just increase damage dealt and decrease enemy health pools while keeping enemy damage high enough to be worth worrying about. I think that would just make it just a bit more fun. They then need to make the combat more interesting, though, by better using flying in their combat design instead of just having flying be only a form of quick traversal, indeed one that actually makes level design matter less, which is not really ideal. Then they probably need a system of affixes that can change up the gameplay on a semi-regular basis. They just need to work out how to get meaningful difficulty that is not based on massive health bars. They then need to work in more modes of play. Look at Destiny 2. You've got like 4 varieties of Crucible. You've got the Iron Banner. You've got loads of varieties of Strikes. It's got the Reckoning. It's got Gambit. It's got Gambit Prime. It's got the regular world content with all the zones, the bounties, the public events. It's got raids. It's got more things on top of that. There are so many ways to play that game. Far more than with Anthem. So BioWare need to work on how they can diversify that gameplay experience. I mean, imagine if Destiny 2 was just rerunning Strikes forever. Again and again and again and again. No one would play it, yet that's what endgame Anthem has essentially been reduced to. I mean, sure, that plus the legendary missions and contracts, but they're not that great, are they? Really, the path to victory for this one is going to be long and it's going to be very expensive, yet that is the only way they can recover this mess. As much as EA may talk about Anthem as being important to their plans and how they want to support it, well, they've got to be aware of what got them into this mess. Seemingly, there was gross mismanagement from BioWare. EA then mandated the game would come out in Q1 of calendar year 2019. That led to it being rushed, and that really did lead to a lot of the problems that the game faced. If that game had have been just delayed 6 months, yes, everyone would have pointed and laughed, they would have been ridiculed, but maybe the game would have came out in a good state. They need to be aware of this. Now, when you look at EA's goals as a business, what's super clear from listening to their earnings calls? Origin Access. Origin Access and its Premier version are super important, and that kind of means that there's a lot more inherent monetization in a game like Anthem for them. Essentially, from a fiscal perspective, making Anthem better is still something that does make sense in terms of how they have set up their business. It's not a game that I think is going to get absolutely massive microtransaction revenue, at least as compared to some other games, but by always sweetening the pot of that Origin Access Premier subscription, it could have a very viable place in their business. And that means that I actually think it's a lot more unlikely that they'll wholesale abandon the game, not because they're saints, but indeed because I think they have structured their business such that having multiple long-term live service games makes a lot of sense. And if you want to look at a company that seems to be also trying to do that, actually Ubisoft. As we covered in a recent episode of the Roundup, Ubisoft seem to be doing some sort of premium, sort of Origin Access-like thing. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense for Ubisoft because they've got For Honor, big long-term live service. They've got Ghost Recon Wildlands, which kind of had a good live service for a long time. The next Ghost Recon will probably have the same. Rainbow Six Siege, obviously, highly successful live service. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, successful live service, even though it's a single-player RPG. You know, it just seems like for Ubisoft, the value proposition would be there more than it would be for EA right now. So for EA, it's going to make a lot of sense, in my view, that they keep Anthem beefed up. But anyway, that's what I think. None of it's particularly rosy, and I mean, the only silver lining is because it's just going to make EA money if they can turn Anthem around because of how they've set up their subscription service. So it's not like I'm saying EA are saints or I'm defending them or anything like that. But there you go. Let me know what you think about Anthem. What would get you playing that game again? That is what I want to know. What is the threshold that they need to cross that you finally think, you know what, maybe I'll jump in? I'd love to know. Let me know down below. Be sure to check out the other report that's went up. And yeah, with that, cheers, and I'll see you next time.